Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1. It's livery reveal season, or it's nearly livery reveal season, or livery reveal season has happened. I don't know when this video is going out, and I'm recording it in mid-December. So there's no better time to look at the best and worst Formula 1 liveries of all time. Starting today with the worst. Then in next week's video we're back to look at the best. We're going to look through each of the 10 current teams and decide their best and worst liveries. We're just going to be looking in the teams in their current forms though, so like for Mercedes, you can't say the best Mercedes livery is Brawn GP because we're going to say that's technically a different team, but if it's a different team name but same owner, we are going to allow going back. So like Racing Bulls can be Alpha Tauri, can be Toro Rosso. That's the rules we're playing by. So with that all cleared up, let's begin with Haas. And for me, the worst Haas is the first Haas. I feel with this one they're very much trying to find their colours. Are they white? Are they grey? Are they black? Are they red? No one's really decided, so they're just going to put it all on the car. There's the big grey section on the cockpit that just looks a bit weird. The outline of the Haas logo is a bit too thick. Then I realised that like the white isn't actually white, it's just a lighter shade of grey. That means the main bulk of the car is just 3 different shades of grey. Then there's a line that separates the light grey from the dark grey, and that goes 3/4 of the way through the logo for some reason. I mean, it's all very strange. I mean, who makes a Formula 1 team and then goes, oh yes, I know, 4 different shades of grey. That'll look wonderful. Sauber now, which I say, Stake F1 team kicks Sauber, but we're just going to call them Sauber because it's easier. Now for Sauber, I almost went for the 2014 livery, which very much like the Haas, is just a lot of grey. But then I saw this, the 2010 Sauber livery. Now this might actually be one of my least favourite liveries ever. If they just kept it white across the entire car, then maybe it might be passable. But for some reason, they've just put like these grey side pods on them. There's also this strange symbol on the engine cover. For the reveal of the car, the engine cover had the drivers' names on it. Then for the first few races of the year, it's replaced by the Sauber logo. Then at some point, this symbol appears, and I don't know what it is. If you know what it is, please let me know. Also, this is the year after BMW left Sauber high and dry, so they're basically sponsorless on the entire car. Then every now and again, Burger King pops up. But overall, yeah, this is just bad. Racing Bulls, or whatever they're going to be called. As of recording, they haven't decided what they're going to be called yet. And you know what? This one's actually very tough, because I don't think they've ever actually had a bad livery. But I had to pick one, so I've gone for 2010. And like I said, it isn't bad. It's one of the many iterations of the spray paint Red Bull design that they had, which I think looks great. They had it from 2006 to 2016, and it's really good, but I just had to pick the one that I liked the least. And for me, it's the 2010 one, mostly due to the nose of the car. I don't really know what's going on here. There's just some like strange speed lines on the side, and the top of it's red, and it's just not quite fitting with the rest of the car. But the rest of the car is very nice, and if I had to pick one which is bad, it's this one. Williams now, and this one was very easy for me, because when I think of bad liveries, this one comes straight to the top of my mind. Now, Williams has had a lot of iconic liveries throughout their history, and we'll get into all the best ones in the next video. But this one is just wrong, and it's 1999. It's a red Williams. There should never be a red Williams. They had the iconic Cannon livery through the late 80s into the early 90s, then moved to the Rothmans livery, which became equally iconic, and the next one is this. And after decades of battling Ferrari, their car now just looks like a knockoff Ferrari. The 98 version was all red, then for 99 they put a bit of blue on the back for some reason, and these like stripes of yellow? I don't really understand. Also that year, Williams had their lowest finishing position in the Constructors' Championship in 11 years. And I blame the livery for that. Alpine, and this is another easy one. We're going back to 2008 and the Renault. The main reason I don't like this one is because it's using the sponsorship colours of that. Do you pronounce it ing or ing? I've never fully understood, but the orange and white of ing, it doesn't work. And you're coming off the back of the blue and yellow, which they used when they won the titles, and to have this next, it just doesn't look great. Also, this will be forever associated with the Crashgate scandal, and the less we mention about that, the better. In fact, the only good thing to come out of Crashgate was that Ing withdrew their sponsorship and we didn't have to see these colours on the car ever again. Aston now, and for Aston I am going to allow racing points because they were technically both owned by Big Daddy Stroll, but we are sticking with Aston for the worst livery. Now I have to say, before we get into this, I don't like the Aston Green. I know a lot of people love it, but for me, it just doesn't do anything. And with Aston, they've had 3 liveries that are all basically the same. The first one had a pink line, the next 2 had that greeny yellow line. So it's hard to say which one I like the least because they're all basically the same, but I've gone with the 2021 one because the pink one looks a bit worse, but realistically I don't like any of these. McLaren, and another very, very, very easy one for me, because when I think McLaren, when I think bad liveries, it's this one. It's 2017. It is just awful. This was the first of the modern orange McLarens, and I refuse to call it papaya. I'm not calling it papaya, it's orange. Orange McLaren. God damn it. Anyway, the orange here actually looks good, but the rest of the design is awful. If they'd done a full orange car, this would have looked great. And from the front, it looks like a full orange car. But then you turn to the side and Jesus, it's bad. It's really bad. Also, unlike modern day McLaren, they were really struggling for sponsorships at this point in time. And most of the car is just completely bare. And it just looks bad. Much like Williams, this livery also coincides with a very bad time in the history of the team. They finished 9th in the Constructors, only beating Sauber. Haas got 17 more points than McLaren this year. McLaren, where one of their drivers was Fernando Alonso, was beaten by Haas. This was an awful time for the team, and an equally awful livery. And also, the very next year they would prove me right, because they would go for an all-orange livery with hints of blue, and it looked far better. Ferrari. Now this is the hardest for me, because all Ferraris are beautiful. I love them, they're all incredible. It was equally difficult for me to pick the best Ferrari and the worst Ferrari, because they're all 10 out of 10s. Apart from one, which was a 9 out of 10. Now, they've rarely changed their livery in the over 70-year history, because when you make perfection, you tend not to mess. And I think the year I'm going to pick, they did create perfection, and then one sponsorship ruined it, and it was 2021. Now, you might look at this car from the front and say, oh, nothing's wrong with that, but then it turns to the side, and you see this neon green monstrosity that they've put on the side of this car. That is the Mission Winnow logo. And my god, this is bad. I haven't really got much else to say on this, so to demonstrate my true feelings, I've created a meme.
There's a nice little one over there.
Mercedes now. And much like the Alfa Tauro Toro Rosso Racing Bulls, Mercedes haven't really ever had a very bad livery. Their liveries have always been pretty decent, to be fair. That being said, though, I must say at this point, I much prefer the black Mercedes to the silver Mercedes, but we'll get into that a bit more later on. But as for their worst livery, I'm going for their first livery of 2010. Much like the Haas, I feel like Mercedes are just trying to find their design with this car. They obviously had the history of the silver arrows. They knew the base of it would be silver. But from there, I don't think they knew really where they wanted to go. The nose has this black bit around it which turns into this strange swoop down the side. There's a black smudge under the Mercedes logo on the engine cover. You have that bluey turquoise of the Petronas, but that's only in the logo and doesn't go down the entire car yet. Then on the rear wing you have the number kind of awkwardly positioned at the bottom of the rear wing in a white circle. I mean, it's a fine livery, but it's not their best. And finally, Red Bull. Now, Red Bull are always accused of not changing their livery, and that's because they don't change their livery. But to actually be fair to them, most big teams don't. If you look through the history of Formula 1, you have like McLaren, who used the Marlboro livery for years whilst they were on top. Williams had that Cannon Camel livery for years. Ferrari have never really changed. Mercedes have always been silver. But for some reason, Red Bull get this thrown at them more than most. I'm not entirely sure why. And the thing is with Red Bull is they kind of have just tweaked their livery more and more every year until they got it perfect. And I think that's what they have now, is really just this perfect livery that works really well. But we have to find a worst one, and we have, and much like Mercedes and Haas, it's their first one, back to 2005. A lot of that iconic design is already there. They've got the Red Bull on the engine cover, which actually used to be used by Sauber when Red Bull won one of their sponsorships. They also have the logo on the nose of the car, which works really well, but there's a lot here that just isn't quite there yet. The stripes down the side of the nose, you know, they're okay, but they're not perfect. There's this white section behind the front wheel of the car. There's been certain images I've seen of it where, like, the shark fin type part off the back of the engine cover is also white, but it doesn't look like that happened at every race. The car was much improved though when they put Darth Vader on it for Monaco. That was good. I mean, it's not great, but they'll get much better. So there you go, there are my worst livery designs for each of the 10 current Formula 1 teams. Let me know which you think are the worst in the comments down below, and I'll see you next week when we talk about the very best. See you then.